Have you run into that? I know you were doing those little chats.
Yeah, no, my show, I don't know. I'm not too awkward. I'm pretty used to talking to like just so many different types of people throughout touring and stuff that, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me like who I end up talking to. So I'm like good at like, all right, what kind of like level of conversation is this going to be?
Well, so here's a question were you always that way, or is that something that touring and this lifestyle taught you, how to be comfortable around all types of people and talk to whoever?
Interesting question. That's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm always been like very talkative and social, even though I sort of like pose a little bit introverted sometimes, I think, on social media and stuff.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing was like when I'm touring, I would just meet so many different types of people. And I'm always just curious, like, even if I don't really even like the person, I'm still kind of like curious about their story. Like I'm genuinely interested in like what the backstory of someone is. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's like a great way to apply, like if you can't tolerate someone, it's a good way to practice sort of compassion. I don't know. I'm just always curious about like how people get to where they are.
I mean, I am too. Absolutely. And I like what you said too, because there's plenty of sort of people you don't connect with on a deep level in this business.
Totally.
But this business is absolutely full of, crazy characters and wild
100%.
stories. And it's so fun to get those little windows into, what would my life be like if I was crazy like that person?
Right? I know. And it's like, like, it's just like, how does someone get from point A to point B, and what are all the choices to get there? And there's really like, everyone has a completely different path. And I love hearing about like that specific path for each person.
I mean, I think for what we do, and probably for any creative venture, that is kind of the coolest part, right? Is that there's no, I use this all the time. People are going to make fun of me. There's no roadmap, right? To get to whatever the goal is, whatever the success is. There's not really, there's not a career track. And so some people like bust through a wall, other people, climb through the sewers and come out a manhole. And and I love that kind of stuff too. And at least for me personally, I feel like I'm still, even though I've been doing this for, 15 plus years now, I still feel like I'm figuring it out myself. And I think talking to other people and seeing how they did it, even if it's not even related to what I'm doing, it helps me give perspective on my own career and my own shit, whatever it is that I'm doing.
Totally. And I think for me, it was like one of the biggest changes for me was when I was lucky enough to meet people that were like my idols and people that I looked up to. I almost always learned that they also don't know what they're doing. And that was like the most empowering thing to me, because that just proves that, yeah, like you said, there is no roadmap. So just keep going and, focus on the stuff that you can control and just get better at that as much as you can, I think.
Absolutely, man. And it's very validating too, right? That if no one knows what they're doing, then whatever you're doing is probably fine, right? Because there's so many times, and I think you could apply this to producing music, you could apply this to touring, you could apply this to, the way you put together a live show, any of it. I'm always sort of comparing myself and saying, well, is this something that like X person would do? Or does this like, if I put this up against Y person's, work, does it stack up? Yeah. And then it's very reassuring to realize, they don't have any idea what they're doing either. And it really has no bearing on you. I had A-Track on this show, and I was asking him something about production or the way he goes about it. And I kept asking, I don't even remember. I was asking about some specific point, and we weren't connecting on the answer or something. And then finally, he was just like, look, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Which was just so, for him to say that, I was like, oh, right. Yeah, that's good. None of us
But that's such a, like, the people that can admit that, I think, are the ones who almost always become the most successful. Because if you think that you know everything, then you're totally screwed.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting when you meet someone who kind of wants to, take that mentor position, like from jump. Like the second you meet them, they're sort of dispensing advice and
Totally.
trying to shape whatever you're doing. And sometimes I like talking to those kind of people just because it's sort of a fun experience. But it makes you wonder sort of what experiences they had previously that led them to that point.
Yeah. And I think, I was on that thought of sort of the path and everything. Like there's this concept of like making it, which I don't like that expression at all.
Yeah.
And people ask me that all the time. They're like, when did you realize you made it? And I hate that question. I don't hate that people ask that question because I think it's a fair question to ask, but I hate, like, it implies a finish line, and I'm like, why would I stop doing the thing that I love to do? It's like, nice, I finally finished making music for my life. Like, that doesn't really make any sense to me. So
right, yeah, exactly.
Usually the people that are kind of like on that tip, I'm sort of like, maybe that person needs to reevaluate what they're in it for. And it's totally fine to be in it for whatever you want to be in. I don't care what people's motivations are, but you got to at least be honest with yourself about what your goals are.
I think that's right, man. And so let's turn that idea on ourselves, because I think for me doing this show, I think it's all projection, right? So I'm asking people about things that I've thought about myself, right? And my own career and all that. So when you're doing your whatever talk show, podcast, what do we call it?
It was just like a quick run of a talk show. It wasn't anything fully fleshed out, but it was, I just wanted to give it a shot because it's something I'd thought about and never really tried it, but it wasn't.
It was cool, man. I tuned in. Do you think you'll do more of them?
I don't know. Like, honestly, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know that.
So much work.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you do this because I know how much work a podcast can be, and you do it. I mean, how many episodes is this? Like 140 or something?
No, we're at like 160, 165. Something like that.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. So
it's a lot, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah. And it's thankless work sometimes. So thank you.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So thank you. Thank you. I want to say thank you.
Hey, man. Thank you to you.
But I like, me and one of my really good friends who I've known him since I was 5. We just love to talk about process, and sort of, I always like kind of picking people's brains about what works for them. And that talk show was just like a chance for me to kind of pick the brain of some of my friends. And I think I even asked them questions maybe I'd never asked them before, which was fun for me. Because usually it's like quite informal when we're just hanging out. And sometimes when you have the spotlight on, it's fun to actually like get into the depths a little bit.
What did you find yourself talking about that maybe surprised you a little bit?
Ooh, interesting. I think like I had a conversation with Daniela Andrade. I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, and now I'm going to get in trouble. But I'm so white, I can't pronounce anything Spanish sounding.
Welcome to my world. Yeah.
I think just like, I really noticed a shift in her career where she really like started to own all of her art, because she started as like a cover artist.
Okay.
And that transition to like, because like covering, like I'm always fascinated by people, like she had all these streams, right, from covers, and you're going to get massive streams from doing that stuff because it's a song. And I've done that too. I'd covered Get What You Give. So like,
yeah, which was huge for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't regret that, but I like don't want to do that over and over again, because it's like, I kind of like, I did that. And I actually feel like she sort of approached that in the same way, but it's like really brave to like make that step to just be like, trust your gut and kind of like reject the like easy numbers.
And to stop doing what's working, right?
Yeah. But like trusting your gut and I follow those intuitions that you have. And then, back to your question, I think she does a really good job at like applying the same creativity to like all facets of her career, which is something I really admire, like being creative on the music end, the visual end, the video end, the art end. And I try to do those things, but yeah, I'm always in awe of people that do it really well.
Yeah, I agree, man. And there's definitely something to be said for that kind of open spirit where you can do something like a cover song that maybe some people would turn their nose up at and participate in it fully, have fun with it, be successful with it, but then also have the other side of it where you don't let yourself get too caught up in the results of it, right? You just
totally
do it, you have fun with it, and then you sort of keep it moving, which I think is kind of the best. It's weird, but I think that's sort of the best way to experience any kind of like triumph or success, right? Is kind of like take it in, enjoy it for what it is, and then move along.
Totally. I'm trying to really practice the sort of the Rick Rubin approach of like not listening to what I've done in my past and just sort of trying to move forward to what I want to do in my future. Yeah, he's like, I don't really listen to things once they're done and out that I've made.
That's interesting.
And I think there's a lot of value in that because you can sort of like, because like I remember also reading who's the guitar player for Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And I read this article where he was like remastering all the old Zeppelin records for like years and like because he mixed them all at the time, which is awesome. But I'm like, dude, who are you doing that for?
Right.
Like it kind of
it
made no sense.
Asking you for that.
Yeah, like it just felt, I don't know, it felt counterintuitive to being a creative to me. And those are great records, and he should be extremely proud of them. I mean, it's fucking Led Zeppelin, of course.
Right.
But I don't know, like it seemed like a crazy thing to do where you're like trying to improve these records that obviously already worked in some way.
And it makes me wonder too, like, have you just run out of stuff to do in the modern times?
Yeah. But that's bullshit. Like, that's such bullshit. Like, come on, there's no way a creative person is just like, I have no ideas left. It's that they like don't want to.
Yeah,
try to have more ideas.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely, yeah. Are those talks, your talk show that you did, are those available online still?
Yeah, so I put them all on my YouTube, which is just at like Felix Cartal, and then they're on my Instagram TV, I guess it's called. I'm
right.
Like,
yeah.
IGTV, is that a thing now? Anyways, yeah, so they're on my Instagram and on my YouTube.
Okay, nice. And you talked to a few, like you had Zed on there, right? And a few others.
Yeah. Zed, Mastercraft, Jesse from Mastercraft, Daniela, this Johnny Orlando, who's like a young singer from Toronto that I did a remix for, Kiara, and there's a bunch. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah,
and Lights as well, who I just get along with really well. So
that's great too. Yeah.
Always an entertaining conversation with her.
I've never met her, man, but I love her work.
She's amazing. I'm always like, pretty much the only people I look up to now are people that achieve longevity. Because I think that's like the right motivation, is just like, let's do it for the long haul. Right.
Well, this is okay. I was going to talk about this way later in the conversation, but just because we got there, one interesting thing I was noticing about you over the course of your career is that at various points, from the start to wherever we are in it now, you've intersected with a lot of these sort of, super, not celebrity, but like really high-end people, right? Like you were working with Steve Aoki and Dimmock early on. More recently, you've been working with Kaskade and, for a million other people. But I was wondering, being around those kinds of people from the start of your career till now, have you noticed anything, any kind of like commonalities between them, or any traits of those really, really, really high performing people? The ones that are like almost sort of crazy for it.
Yeah, the people that are almost like addicted to it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a part of it. I don't know if it's like addicted to success or anything. That's a byproduct, I think. But I think, what is it? I think the hardest thing to tap into, but if you can tap into it, is momentum. I think that's really important. And when I see Kaskade and Steve, I see like they just have a constant momentum where they don't dwell on something when it is a success for them. And then maybe they kind of are practicing that Rick Rubin thing a little bit as well. They just kind of are constantly moving forward. Like, they don't need to put out another song ever in their lives. Like they're rich.
Right.
So why do they do it then? And I think it's like, I do truly, like, I know they just both inherently love music and they live and breathe it. Yeah. And I think they do it in different ways. I think Steve comes from much more of he comes from a punk rock background, which is more what I do. Ryan definitely comes from like a rave background.
Yep.
But there's punk rock. I think there's also the reason why I resonate with punk rock mentalities is there's like this DIY ethic where, you know, like, oh, we don't have the budget for the video, whatever, let's figure something out.
Yep.
Some people might just stop at that point where they're like, oh, I guess we can't make a music video then.
Yeah, or somebody tells you can't do something, right?
Yeah. Like Ryan goes films at the fucking Grand Canyon the other day.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then the next day he's doing another live stream just in his backyard. Like, why is he even doing the next one?
Right. You'd think he could take a day off, but no.
Yeah, but it's like, no, he just likes to do it because he loves it. And I think they've like zoned in on that. And I think you're not so much thinking about what's the outcome. You're more so thinking about what is it internally doing for you, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not like their therapist or anything. So
no,
I don't know their inner
not
workings
at all.
of their brains.
I mean, I had Steve on this show just a few weeks ago, and he straight up said, "Yes, I'm addicted. It is an addiction," and I've heard that from other people as well. But yeah, it's an interesting thought, right? Because it's that kind of momentum, like you said, the addiction, if you want to call it that has allowed them to get to where they are. But then I also wonder with the Rick Rubin thing we were talking about, can they enjoy any of it, you know? Or is it only enjoyable because there's something to do after it?
I think they're enjoying the process while it's happening.
Yeah.
And then because if you're in the studio and you're like, this is going to be a hit, and then it's not, you can't then then you don't enjoy that time making that song, even though you thought it was good at the time.
Right.
So like, I don't know, you have to like remove, like once it's out there, it's out of your control kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you have like your teams and stuff that can help, and you should set those things up for sure to like give it its best shot. But
no, I think you're right. I think the momentum thing you said, it's like my wheels are turning. That's dead on, because that should always be the goal, right? Is not to get so focused on whatever the thing you're doing right now is, whatever's in front of you. The focus should be, how does this fit into keeping the momentum going?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I have also been reading this book called Grit. I don't know if you've heard of...
no, tell me about it.
Who's it? What's her name? I think it's Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
I'm that last name might be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Somebody will tweet at us, I'm sure.
Yeah. Put it in the podcast notes.
Yeah,
people
going
say that
in
on
the description.
podcasts all the time.
We are sponsored today by Grit.
Yeah. But she kind of like studies she was interested in like studying successful people, right? She was a teacher in school. And, you know, she would be like, the beginning of the semester, there'd be two kids who are like obviously equally intelligent, and one kid would always do better. Why? And it like basically comes down to what happens when the thing that they expected to happen doesn't happen. How do you react to that? And like people that just kind of like take it, you know, they're like, oh, okay, well now I want to get better at this, or I want to like try it a different way. Like that attitude is everything. And you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you don't have the like, well, that didn't work, but like, are you going to let that like ruin your day for fucking a month, or are you going to just try to retool and keep going?
Sure. And I think that's absolutely another characteristic of successful people, is just how do you respond to adversity, right?
Totally. And that's like, to me, that's like Aoki to a T. Is like, he's super gritty.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And people forget that about him.
Yeah.
I think because of where he's at now. Well, what about, I want to talk more about you though, man. I mean, you mentioned, like Steve, you kind of share that band background and a bit of that punk aesthetic. Did you grew up kind of close to where you are now, right? In like British Columbia, Vancouver area?
Yeah, I grew up in like a suburb outside of Vancouver, about 20 minutes outside.
Okay. What kind of a childhood does that give you? I mean, that's a beautiful area. Was it happy? Was it fun? What was that like?
I had a good childhood. Like my family is super supportive. My parents are still together to this day.
You got some siblings?
Yeah, one older sister, 2 years older. And yeah, she's pretty, like my sister's quite musical. She's an excellent pianist. I always like joke she's the way more musical one, even though I'm the one that ended up doing music.
Isn't that the way it always goes?
My joke is like, it's dance music. It's not real music.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
It's like, it's just like one note, the whole song. How hard can it be?
Yeah. Well, that's like, you hear a lot of comedians always say that they're not the funny one in their family too.
Totally. Yeah. Like they're maybe the one who gets picked on and that makes them funny or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, my childhood was good. I played a lot of sports and then I kind of like got into school band and was like doing jazz band and all that stuff. But I never was like, I was playing bass guitar. I started on trombone for like 1 year and then I switched to bass actually because my friends had a punk band. And I was like, that's so cool. And I think it was like grade 7 or grade 8. It was like really young.
Oh, that's perfect. That's the perfect time to join a punk band.
Totally. And they, I remember like, so they kicked out the singer because they didn't like him. Or I don't know what the story was, whatever. He got kicked out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll try to sing, even though I've never sang in my entire life. But it's punks, like who cares? Right. So yeah, I did that, and they were like, it was mostly like they got along with me better, and we were like, I wanted to just hang out with them mostly because they were my friends, and it seemed cool. And
by the way, side note, that's a great reason to work with anybody at any stage in your career. That's kind of the best reason to work with anybody.
Oh, totally! Like totally builds your circle, right?
Yeah.
And then like as you grow, you like all want to grow together, and
exactly.
There's hopefully no jealousy, but yeah, so then they had a bass player and then they kicked him out because that wasn't working. And then I was kind of like, well, I could try to like learn bass and then I can just sing and play bass. And that's kind of like how I picked it up. And then I switched in school band from trombone to bass so that I could get better at it. And I don't know, bass isn't really that hard. It's like one note at a time. It's
right.
half as much effort as guitar. What's that? It's like a Motley Crue joke or something. It's just the guy who is the worst musician, just give him the bass and no one will probably notice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a semi-punk band in middle school and for sure, our bass player was terrible, but that's why he was playing the bass.
Yeah, he's not the lead guitar player.
We're going to get so many angry bass players now.
I can handle it. Yeah, so I was just doing that, and yeah, we would rehearse like 2 to 3 times a week. We just played all the time. We just loved to jam. It was so fun. And yeah, that's kind of just like where I learned about arrangement and all those types of things. And
so you were writing original music from the start?
Yeah. And I was like by far the worst person in the band, but I was very much like, I wanted to just be there when we were writing.
Yeah.
And we would like, a lot of kids would like play video games after school. And I'd be like, let's write songs. And so
yeah, that's a good indication right there.
Yeah. But like, it's weird because like none of them do. They've all done different things now for music. So I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's an indicator, but like, is it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you were the one who was, sort of cajoling everybody and getting everybody together and saying, oh yeah, after school every day, this is what we should be doing. It's that. Yeah. I don't know necessarily where that drive came from, but I feel like that is the indicator that if you were the one in the group doing it, probably you would continue to do that in your adult life.
Maybe, yeah. I think I'm a competitive person as well, so there's a bit of that. Like I'm like, we can be better than the other punk bands.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Like
do you have some rival bands?
Oh, totally. And I was playing like a lot of sports too. So I'm like, my dad's my dad's an athlete or was an athlete growing up. So I kind of had that like athletic coach in my ear mentality.
That's another big part of it too, to go back to what we were saying about, super high performing people, that competitive edge. I mean, maybe I'm just thinking about this because I just watched the Michael Jordan thing.
So good. That's so good, by the way.
It's really fun. It's really fun. I will say my only criticism, I thought it was kind of clumsy the way they kept jumping around in time. Just from like a filmmaking perspective, it kind of annoyed me, but the footage is incredible.
You can't watch those highlights and not just be like, this is sick.
100%. And no one is more competitive than him, maybe ever in the history of the human race.
Oh yeah, he's a freak for sure.
Yeah. But that's, I think, another point is, I know for sure, I mean, I've talked to Diplo many times about this, who is probably the most competitive person that I personally know. And that so much of it comes down to that, where it's just, that is where that drive and that motivation and that momentum comes from is, you just won the game, but there's another game coming up,
Do you think that it's a healthy thing to be competitive in something that's arguably like not necessarily needs to be competitive? I mean, I guess that's like debatable, but
I mean, I think my boring but true answer is it's kind of everything in moderation.
Yeah.
I think it can be really toxic if it gets out of control. And I think it can lead to huge accomplishment with no satisfaction if it's out of control. Mm-hmm. But, if it's just a drive that you're able to sort of focus in productive areas of your life, then I think it can be great. Then I think it's, you're sort of scratching that itch. You're channeling something that maybe could have been an issue for you in different situations. And now you've sort of figured out a way to turn it to your benefit, which, I don't know, the older I get, the more I sort of realize that, at least personally, that's all it is trying to figure out the parts of me that don't work so great and figuring out how to flip those parts into something that is helpful,
Totally. Yeah, like how do you harness the things that maybe can destroy you, but like in a way that is beneficial rather than
right, as opposed
negative.
To pretending that they're not there, or as opposed to just trying to eliminate them entirely. It's like our brains are our brains, our brain chemistry is our brain chemistry. So, there's, if you're just born with some kind of imbalance, which I feel like a lot of creative people are in one way or another.
But I think you can work on those things too. I think,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So Don't get me wrong.
Sometimes people are like, that's the way I am. And I'm like, well, that feels like an excuse sometimes too.
Yeah. Anyone who says that is a kind of a jerk, I think. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, changing myself, if I'm able to successfully change something about myself that I feel good about, I mean, I can't think of anything other than like sex maybe that feels that good.
Yeah. Like if you can break a habit that is negative.
Right.
It's so hard to do, but you don't get a bigger like feeling of an accomplishment than that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Well, and so for you, if you're in these bands, you're going through high school, going into, you went to college, right? Somewhere in the area?
Yeah, I went to University of British Columbia, UBC.
Okay. Yep.
But I did not complete. I'm a musical dropout.
Hey, man. There are plenty of you out there. What were you going to school for?
I was doing English language with sort of a film minor, but like a film production minor for a little bit. And then that I think it was like the second year, they were like, by the way, film production doesn't exist at this school anymore. We've discontinued that. I was like, I think it's just because Vancouver Film School is so like the thing. It's like such a world-renowned program that they're like, why even bother to compete with that?
Because so much gets shot in Vancouver,
totally.
Right? It's kind of like the Canadian Hollywood a bit, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you see a movie that's like, especially if it's like Seattle or something, or it's like supposed to be Seattle, it's always Vancouver.
Yeah, that's really funny. And when did you become aware or involved with electronic music in any capacity?
So my band was like a punk band for a long time. And then we sort of like shifted into kind of like proggy, like Mars Volta influence, like At the Drive-In and like hardcore, like Refused and stuff like that.
Sure, you matured, right?
Yeah, something like that. I think it's just like we got more pretentious.
Yeah, sure.
But we'll go with mature. That sounds better.
Yeah. Why not?
And then kind of like we were like getting into Radiohead and stuff. And I think kind of like when I heard Kid A, that was like a really big turning point for me. Because it kind of like broke down all these rules for me, like what a band could be. So I think I remember when that record came out, and I loved that record, but I remember even more vividly the changes in my friends when that record came out, because for them it became like a Bible almost for a few of my friends. Right.
And so seeing it through their eyes and how their perspective on music changed, even though I wasn't again, great album. I listened to it a bunch, but for whatever reason, it was not exactly the like right place, right time for me. Totally. But seeing it through their eyes, it absolutely changed my mind about how everything was kind of connected, if that makes sense.
100%. And I think Tom York was also collaborating with and then he collaborated like Mode Selector and stuff, like weird people like that, which was kind of like my worlds were colliding a little bit. And
he started DJing as well. A bit later on, maybe.
And I've always kind of felt like, the thing I don't like about bands a lot of the time is you are arguably pigeonholed a lot more than when you're a producer, by far, right? You kind of like establish your sound, but like you can't just like put out a dance. I mean, you could, but it would just be hard. It'd be so much harder, I think. Maybe it's like a little bit in my head, those restrictions, but arguably I think like making a massive change from record to record.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's hard. Although I think it's hard for certain dance music producers too. I mean, what about even if you look at your own career, the first few records you got known for were these kind of like indie electro blog house records, right? That were kind of like they were bangers. They were these like heavy club tunes.
Yeah.
And then, over time you sort of evolved to, I don't know what you would call what you do now, but I mean, it's much more song-based, right?
Totally. And yeah, but I feel like the fact that I did get to do that and like still kind of am not irrelevant maybe is like proof in the pudding a little bit.
Did you get any pushback or any resistance when you did start to change away from just sort of the club banger tunes?
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know, like my answer has just always been, like, you can still listen to those songs. They're not gone.
That's the Jay-Z line, right? If you want my old shit, buy my old album.
I'm such and like, it just seems like, why are you allowed to grow in like every aspect of your life except for like the music you make? It feels like I don't wear the same clothes I wore when I was 19.
Me neither, thank God.
I don't eat Subway every day anymore.
Right.
I don't drink like rum and Coke out of a warm Coke bottle that I like poured to like go on the bus with anymore. Like I have grown as a person, so like why shouldn't my work do the same?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that there's this mentality, and I've definitely fallen prey to this sometimes, that if you're like, a lot of good art comes from struggle, right? Or comes from a messed up situation or a inner problem that you have. And then I think there's that fear, right? Of like, what if I fix the problem? What if my life suddenly is good? Yeah. A, can I still make good art? And B, then there's, from the fan perspective, it's like, well, am I still engaged with this person? Do I still buy into, since when I connected with this person's art, it was during this dark time, and maybe I was in a dark time. And it's interesting to think about artists and their audiences growing, but not always at the same rate or in the same direction.
Totally. And I think, are you kind of like talking about the idea of like romanticizing the struggling artist a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that gets done so much especially in our little niche. And, some people turn it into a brand. Some people monetize that.
Totally. And yeah, is that wrong? I guess it depends from where it's coming from.
Yeah, I think that's true too. And
because I don't think like struggling is, it's definitely like very universal feeling that everyone has. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using that as like part of like an influence for your art, but I guess it just depends like where it's coming from. Is it genuine or not?
Is it genuine, and is your sort of putting it on display, is that making it worse or creating some kind of negative feedback loop where you just stay in that place, right?
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, the danger is if you start to incorporate that, and I'm not talking about anyone in specific, but if you incorporate that into your brand, into what's making you money, then it's almost advantageous for you to sort of stay in a bad place, right?
Totally. It's weirdly like, I can sort of like remember times when I'm struggling, and I can write about those things even if I'm like in a good place. Yeah,
well, isn't that a funny thing, that if you basically anytime you make a positive change and you worry about still being able to connect with, those darker places or that struggle you came from, it's always better. It's always easier,
100%.
No matter what it is.
Yeah.
Like that's a message I wish was more out there, is that the healthier and the better you're able to make your life, the better your art will be. Just almost full stop.
Oh yeah, like romanticizing the struggle is like, it's complete bullshit. It is. I think. Like,
no, I completely agree.
Like I like don't think I don't think I've ever written a song like fucked up ever.
Yeah. I used to produce drunk sometimes.
Yeah, like I'll fuck around a little bit sometimes. Like it's fun. Right. But I'm like, am I really like getting work done? Not really. And like I kind of like, I've had studio sessions, and I've had it where like people, some people will like smoke a ton of weed, and I don't care what people like want to do, but I don't find those sessions as productive usually as when everyone's sort of just like there to work.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Have you always been that way? Like in terms of, if you think back, like when you first started going on the road and first started, really having an audience that you were aware of, was there anything different about your process then that has changed or updated now?
I think like anytime I sort of hear like an artistic cliche, I really try to think about like why that is a cliche that we all repeat and if it is actually true. Like I don't believe writer's block exists.
Interesting.
Like at all.
Okay.
Like, I think that's complete horseshit.
So what do you,
because like how are you going to solve writer's block? By not writing? That makes no sense.
Right.
So
well, that's almost just a change in perspective, right? Instead of saying I'm blocked, it's more that, oh, this is taking me a long time today or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's fine. I think like it's not that every song has to like go the same way. That's not realistic either. But I don't know. I don't like putting creativity on a pedestal. I think creativity is work, and I think it's a muscle. And I think the more you just dedicate time to it every day, the stronger that muscle gets. It's the same reason why when you write with a great writer, you're like, how the fuck did they come up with that so quickly?
Right.
If they're like and you assume they're like talented, but they're not. I mean, don't even get me started on talent. That's like another whole thing. But no, it's because they do it every day. It's the same reason why you go to the gym with someone who works out every day, like your trainer, and he just kicks your ass and you're like, he's some sort of freak of nature. No, he's not a freak of nature. He works on it every day.
Oh, 100%.
And now he's good at it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if we go back to sports metaphors, it's batters before they go up to bat. They've got the donuts on the bat, the weights, right?
Yeah.
So they're swinging this really heavy thing. And then all of a sudden they walk up there and can crank out a home run like it's nothing.
Totally. Yeah.
And there's so much work that goes into just being able to make it look easy, right?
Totally. And that's why I actually think like naturally talented is one of like the most dangerous statements in the creative world, because it's an excuse. Like if you say, I wish I was like that person, but they're naturally talented, and I'm like, well, then good luck ever getting close, because why would you even work at it? Why would you even try then?
Right.
If it's just completely talent.
Yeah. If you have no agency in this fact,
right?
Then what are you doing?
What's the point then if it's not possible? Like I don't know. Like obviously there's like certain genetic. I'm not saying like, you know, Michael Jordan is 6'7" or 6, like that helps. That helps, right? Like he's not 5'7". Like, and like models are like genetically, you know, all these things. And
but everybody has something, right?
Yeah.
Everybody
so
has one
like,
of those things.
My thing is like, I don't like, do I think everyone could sing like Adele? No. Do I think if you work hard enough at being a singer, could you have a career in music as a singer? 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, how did you get into production and to making electronic music coming from the band world? And were you like that? Like once you started learning production, did you have that kind of laser focus on it?
I mean, so weirdly in high school, we had this class called music composition, which was so strange to me. I don't even know why this class existed. I think it was just there. One of my band teachers was just, he was like playing in bands and stuff. And he was always like trying to get studio equipment at the school.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of would be like, we can record the like Christmas concert band and then we can like sell the CDs and that can fund the band department, which is a great idea.
Oh,
but I also
cool.
think it was like sneaky, like he wanted to record his band at our school and he could like get the school to pay for some recording gear. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it's a bit of both. It was like a mutually beneficial.
Yeah. We had a math teacher at my high school who had a band of his own and a little recording studio in his basement. And he didn't really bring it into school. I wish there had been a class like that. But my bands recorded albums in our math teacher's basement, like all throughout high school.
That's awesome.
Oh, it was great.
I did the same thing. Like we had our band and we would come to the school on the weekend and he would come in and help us record. It was really nice of him.
That's so cool.
But there's this course called music composition and it was like, we learned like basic MIDI. It was like really strange. Like we like learned a little bit of Cubase, like kind of just recording basics. And we learned, and then they had Reason, like Reason 1.0.
Whoa.
It was crazy.
That's so cool for high school.
I know. It was, and I just like the minute I started playing with Reason, I was like, this is the most fun thing I've ever done. And it was all I could, and I like went, like I think I like brought like a drive and I just like stole it to take it home. Because I was like, this, I need this, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And my teacher was cool with it because he was like, you love this, like you should follow that.
That's a great teacher.
Yeah. And and I actually remember in high school, like, because I was kind of like, I was like a weird, like, I was like a kind of a nerdy, like smart kid. Like I did pretty well, and I was in like jazz band, but I also like played in a punk band, and then I was like a skater. Like, it was a really weird mix. But I also played on like hockey. I was kind of just like everything.
Right.
And I remember, but I would like, like wear skinny jeans and like just dress like an idiot and like all these crazy things. And I remember walking down the hallway one day and like kids would like yell shit at me all the time, like calling me like gay and shit. It was crazy. Sure. And I was like, all right, high school. And I remember walking down the hallway one day and these kind of like the like thuggish kid. What do you even call kids who like think they're thug in high school?
I mean, just bullies, right?
Yeah, like kind of like want to be gangster kids in high school. Yeah. And they like come up to me, like 3 of them approached me in the hallway, and I'm like, what is happening right now? And they're like, we hear you know how to make beats. And they're like, yo, can we come record our raps at lunch? And then I just like would hang out with these kids that I've never had anything in common with. And I was like tracking their shitty rap songs.
I love that, man. I've talked about this before. That's something that music brought into my life that I never would have had otherwise. Is I came from, a middle class background. I went to a small private school. It was almost all white kids. And I went to like an Ivy League college, and I was kind of just following this path. And if it wasn't for music bringing in all these interesting people and backgrounds into my life, like I think my world would be so much smaller, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because you can just bond over like music. It's such a universal thing. It's like that sounds like a cliche too, but it's so
true though, man. That is the connection, because you just said it. Like, you never would have even talked to these people unless you guys had this mutual interest. And then I'm sure once you started recording their shitty rap songs, that brings you into their world a little, right? And then your mind is opened up to something you might not have thought about.
Totally. Or I had no interest in making rap beats.
Sure.
And they were like, I was like, yeah, I guess I can like slow down this like thing I was working on and see if you guys can rap over. I don't know. We were just figuring it out.
No, that's
beautiful.
And
then I guess kind of like, sorry, I feel like I didn't fully answer the question about
it's all good. No, I mean, I think I was just asking kind of about how it progressed for you. You know, you got into production. Was there a point where that became sort of your main focus and the band thing sort of dropped off a bit, like where it became a little more serious?
Yeah. So, I mean, by the end of the band, we were all sort of like noodling a little bit within like Reason and things like that, like software production, like making interludes like between songs on our terrible albums and things like that. And then kind of like when the band broke up, once we went to university, kind of because we all went sort of different ways, it was just getting too hard to like travel and everything. I kind of just like kept messing around with Reason just because I liked it. It was like my form of procrastinating the schoolwork that I didn't want to do, I guess. And then I kind of just started like uploading things to MySpace.
Just on your own, putting it out there.
I guess like when I like discovering like Justice and Mastercraft and Boys Noise and like Bloody Beetroots and that whole scene, I guess like the Bloghouse era, if you will.
Late 2000s era, right?
Yeah, probably like 2005 to 2007, that era. I remember just being like absolutely blown away when I heard that stuff. It was because club culture at that time was not universal yet.
Yes. Definitely not in North America.
Like, I would have no interest in going to a club because it wasn't like, it was like, there's dress code, wear a button-up shirt, and like all this lame shit.
Well, and you want to talk about Radiohead Kid A moment. I mean, when Justice came out, that was another seismic shift, right?
Oh, for sure.
All of a sudden, it was all of these influences mashed together, and it was pulling such a diverse audience. I mean, I remember I was living in Chicago at the time, and I think on Justice's first US tour that they ever did, they came through Smart Bar in Chicago. And I went there with, such a great spot. And I went there with a couple friends. It was just rammed, like insane to the gills, like sweaty wall kind of thing. But all the people there, it was all people I'd never seen before. And I was a raver. I was going to the clubs a lot, and I was a DJ. I was DJing the clubs a lot. It was all these people I had never seen before. And that to me was this strong indicator of like, oh, this is going to be a big deal.
So when you saw that new sort of fan base, what did you like? What did it feel like that fan base was to you at that time?
I don't know if I knew what it was at the time. But looking back on it, if I look back at the scene it became the scene that I was a part of in those years, whatever you want to call it, the hipster scene, the blog scene. It was, young people from various backgrounds. Kind of just, it was a hipster thing pretty much, man. But
it was hipsters for sure.
Oh, it was absolutely hipsters, but kind of, hipster now has like this weird negative connotation. Back then, it was kind of just like a bunch of grungy kids running around,
Yeah.
And all I was going to say is it's exactly what you were talking about is all of the formalities were stripped away. I think that was what felt really refreshing to me.
Because a lot of that stuff needed to be kicked down, I think.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it also connected with the way my brain processes music. because I had been DJing for years prior to that. Like I was a raver growing up. I started DJing kind of young, but I was just always coming from that rave mentality. Then when I got to college, I started playing, like bar gigs to make grocery money. And those gigs were much more, kind of early bottle service vibes, very much like fancier. I had to play a lot of music that I wasn't playing otherwise. And all of a sudden, the connections in my mind were like, oh, well, this rap song actually the vibe of it reminds me of this, old like UK rave song, and I could play this with that. And the Justice era, the Bloghouse era, I feel like that's when everybody started thinking that way.
Yeah, they kind of like, it became open format in a way that was like exciting, I guess, a little. I remember the Ed Banger tour came to Vancouver, and I think it was like Justice, DJ Medi, Busy P, maybe So Me.
Yeah.
Someone else probably too. But they were just all, squad, they all just DJ'd together, like so on stage. And it was like hearing the craziest shit I'd ever heard electro. And then it would be like, they would drop Maneater by Nelly Furtado. Right. And I would just be like, what the fuck is even, like, what is this?
Were you DJing at the time?
No, I wasn't. I definitely, like, I never really planned on DJing, to be honest. I honestly just wanted to make music. And then, people started people started messaging me on MySpace saying like, can we book you? And I'd be like, to do what? They're like, DJ. And I was like, I should maybe learn how to do that then. It was like literally like something dumb like that. And then, I was in college. I was piss broke. Not piss broke, but I was like not enough to buy turntables or anything.
Yeah, of course. Standard struggling college student.
Normal college shit. And I was like, I started to develop like an online friendship with Jesse from Mastercraft at that point. Because he'd messaged me and said he liked a few of the songs that I had on MySpace. And I was just like, yo, I keep getting these DJ requests and I don't know what to do because I don't know how to DJ. Right. And he was kind of like, you should just get Ableton and get a controller. He's like, then you can just practice. He's like, and everyone in France is doing that anyways, like Cirkin, like Les Petits.
That's true. Bilou. All the French guys, they were on controllers. I forgot about that.
So I literally just bought a controller, bought Ableton, and then in Vancouver, like my buddy who was running a club night was like, we really want to book you for your first show ever. And I was like, okay, let's do it at the end of the month. And then I literally had just bought it the next day. And then I practiced for the whole month. And I was just like, I don't know.
How did it go? What were those early gigs like?
They were just like, they were like punk shows, man. Like people were just moshing and stage diving and it was sweaty and they weren't raves or anything really. Yeah. They just felt like, it felt like a dive bar in a club, kind of.
Exactly. Well, and that's another great point about what that era felt like, right? Is everything felt like a dive bar. Nothing felt like a club. And this is, I like a club, but that new energy. I also grew up playing in metal bands and going to metal shows, and like it was kind of back to that raw energy, which I think, looking back, probably reminded me of being a kid. And it's still, I don't know, I'm chasing that energy to this day,
I think ultimately, like the energy that is attractive is when you can tell people are there because they love the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like a lot of the time that like all that club shit with like wear your button up shirt and like, oh, you can't come in because like your shoes are scuffed or I was like, these people don't give a fuck about the records that get played tonight.
Yeah.
So I have nothing in common with those people because they don't care about music. And that's pretty much all I care about.
Yeah. Well, you ended up playing a bunch with the people we just mentioned, right? You went on tour with Mastercraft. Did you play some shows with Justice as well? Like in those early years?
I did one show with Justice, my third show ever, which is so crazy.
Your third show ever?
Ever, yeah. Like ever DJing. It was I opened and then Busy P and then Justice played.
Wow.
And it was in Glasgow. I was actually going to school there at the time at the Arches, at the Arches, which doesn't exist anymore. And it all just kind of like, just right place, right time. I just like a guy messaged me on MySpace who was like, hey, I really want to be an agent and I'm a young kid and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, hey, sounds like what I'm doing. I'm trying to be a DJ and I don't know what I'm doing. And he just like, he's like, I used to be a bouncer and he happened to live in Glasgow, which was where I was heading to school. It was just like a weird, it just happened. And he just kind of like flexed my way onto a lot of these shows. And I like didn't even really get paid. I don't even think I got paid for the Justice.
Sounds about right.
I think I got paid with like a 12 case of Heineken or something. Yeah. And I was like stoked.
Of course, man.
Because I literally was like, wait, are you saying I don't have to buy a ticket to the Justice show?
Right.
That was like good for me.
Well, and playing in front of what must have been a big crowd early on must have been a big learning experience.
It was like, I think the room was like 2,500 people. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and how quickly did you go from that to, starting to tour on your own? I mean, what was the Joker like your first sort of like big tune?
Yeah. I still don't really think that song is like big in a weird way. Like, it's like, not like it's, I don't think most people know that song, but it was like a DJ. It was like a DJ record.
Yeah, big in the scene, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was the first thing that I ever put on SoundCloud where it kind of like just did this more than anything. Because I was probably getting like, I don't know, in between 1,000 to 5,000 plays max at that time. And I remember like after a month, I think I had like 30,000 and I was like,
big deal. Big deal.
And it was like, it was getting rinsed by people that I would never expect to play it, like Benny Benassi and like Diplo and stuff. So it was crazy. It was a crazy time for me.
And did you start touring a lot around that?
Yeah. So that was kind of like when I came back from Glasgow, which was the first semester abroad. I just did one semester abroad. And then kind of when I came back, I did like a little mini tour of the US, like over Christmas break, like through New Year's. And it was like a full shit show. Like, just like, there's no way I must have lost like thousands of dollars, but didn't care.
Just paying to show up. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. Probably getting like max $150 a show kind of thing.
Oh yeah, man. I was there. I went.
Yeah. And they're like, figure out your flights. You got this, right? And I was like, what am I doing? Anyways. But that's when I met Steve. I ended up playing at, what was the name of the club? Like Banana Split on like, but it was LAX was the name of the club, I think.
Yeah. It was Banana Split was the name of the night and LAX was the club.
Right. It's always weird that the club was called LAX to me.
It's very weird, yeah.
But they had a big party like the night before New Year's because everybody was in town. And I like got to DJ for like 30 minutes that night, like in between like, I don't know, like DJ Medi and stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I met Steve. All those people, I've just been messaging them on like MySpace and stuff.
Right.
And then, I kind of like met who ended up being my manager for a while there. And we just kind of like, then he was like, I want to put your music out on Dimmock. And it kind of all started like falling into place there. And then
you ended up working with Dimmock for a long time, right?
Oh yeah. Like, I want to say like at least like more than 5 years, maybe 8 even.
Yeah,
I put out two full albums with them. Yeah, and a bunch of EPs and I mean, they were really good at building a community within the label, which is something still that like I really like appreciate, like looking back on it because, they would put me on stages and stuff that probably I didn't just deserve to be at the time because I didn't know what I was doing yet. But Steve was really great at giving artists that chance to like get in front of a crowd and stuff. So got to do like there's so Tomorrowland and all those kinds of things. Oh
yeah, man. I mean, I think there's so much value. If you want to, people like to talk about that sort of the label system is dead in 2020 or that, labels aren't what they used to be or don't have as much to offer, which I agree with on a lot of points. But one thing I think a label or at least a label that has a big figurehead at the front of it, like a Steve Aoki figure.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of like squad, that family, being a part of that can be really influential in somebody's career.
For sure. And I also think like a lot of people think that like when you get a label, you get to just stop doing all this work.
Right. Yeah.
But I actually think the best way to work with a label is to give them too many ideas, and then they'll be excited to work with you, because like it's not their job to be creative. That's your job. Like, you're the artist. My thing is like, you want to set up everything in your life so that the only thing you should be worried about is the creative side of things. I don't want to worry about like filling out my royalty like numbers and shit, all that bullshit.
Of course. As a young artist, sending music to labels, and I think it's this murky thing of sort of, how do I contact them? How can I be noticed? Whatever it is. Do you think there's, you mentioned just having all this ammunition, right? Which I think is really smart, is just having a lot to offer and a lot to show, and letting the label decide which of it they find interesting. Yeah. But is there any other things you've seen, either in your own career or through watching other people come up, that you think are maybe keys people don't know about?
Oh man, I think about this so much because I get these questions so often from like,
I mean, it's sort of the unanswerable question.
Yeah, no,
right?
but I think that there are some things you can tease out, I think, that can be helpful. I think like, well, first of all, like when you send someone a track, you should be really clear on like what your goal is when you're sending it to them. Like, are you asking for feedback? Are you expecting, like, I get tracks all the time and then I'm like, yeah, man, it's cool. But like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't have a button to be like, I'll make it a hit for you.
I mean, that's my number one response. It's just like, yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah. And like, it can be good. Like, there's lots of songs people send me that are good, but I'm like, I can barely make my own songs hits. Right. Like, why? Like, I don't know, but it's like, so I like when people are asking specific things. I think that's very helpful. So like I think that having an intent when you ask someone something is important. And then also like, just don't spam people is like my number one thing. Like, don't post it in comments and sections and all that. Just never do that. Like,
no, never.
And I was thinking about why that bothers me when people do that. I was actually on a run this morning, and I was like, because I was thinking about this podcast today, and I was like, wanted to get actually into like helping aspiring producers. As I get older, I feel like I got to give back a little bit or something.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah.
But I was trying to think of like, why does it bother me so much when someone posts something like in a comment section or just kind of like spams it? And one, it's like, I don't know who the fuck you are, right. Which is just weird. But two, it's like, you're almost like, it makes it seem like you want a shortcut.
Sure. Yeah.
And to me, like, the number one quality I would look for in an artist that I would want to invest in would be that proof that they're in it for the long haul and the right reasons, and that they're like truly passionate about what they do. And the minute I see that, I think it's like they just want quick fame.
Yeah, I think it's also, you're absolutely right. And I think it's also that tells me that they didn't do their research.
Totally.
Because if you do your research, if you look into it a lot, there's nobody who's like, oh, great, somebody's spamming my comments, Like, that's just an obvious thing that people don't want you to do. And so to me, it's just like, well, I wouldn't want to work with somebody who has that kind of mentality anyway, even no matter how good the song is.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's similar like how I feel about people that like respond to hater comments, where I'm just like, it's just like, why even waste your time with any of this shit? Right. It's like someone said once, like, can you imagine like Michael Jordan going on a YouTube video of himself and like responding to people that had like said he sucks?
Yeah, exactly, man.
But okay,
I think too, I wanted to call out something you said earlier too, is that, not spamming people. And when you do approach someone, I think another key is you have to be upfront about what you want, which you already mentioned, but also concise.
Totally.
Just keep it short. Just be like, this is who I am. This is my thing. This is what I'd like to do with it. Bye.
100%. Yeah. And don't send like 20 tracks.
And don't send 20 tracks. Don't follow up once maybe, but don't keep coming back to it.
Yeah. A follow up is fine, I think.
Yeah.
There's this I can't remember who it was, but there was this writer I liked where he said when people would send him stuff, he would be like, he wouldn't actually read it. He would just be like, hey man, it's great, but can you work on it just so it's your best work before, like, but would pretend he read it kind of.
Right. That's actually kind of brilliant.
Yeah. So
because that's feedback that I find myself giving a lot is, somebody will send me something and I'll say, yeah, this is exactly what we said before. This is cool. But have you thought about how this stacks up against everything else that's going on in the culture right now? And if this is going to be one of the first things people hear from you, is this what you want it to be?
Totally. Yeah. Oh man, it's so hard. But yeah, there is no roadmap, but I'm trying to think of like some actual, I think like, okay, so don't spam comments. We've established that. Yeah. But I think, so my approach would be, if I was trying to get noticed by a label that I like, I think a cold email to a label is still probably tough.
Yeah. Just because they get so many, it's a really tough numbers game.
Yeah. So I think what I would do if I was trying to be smart about it would be, I would go through their entire catalog, find the person on it who seems the least famously, like the closest to my level.
Yeah. Do your research.
And try to like build a relationship with that person, but don't even send that person music. Just try to be like, hey man, like your song on blah, blah, blah is really dope. And then maybe you get to a point where you just are chatting with this person and then you can get like an intro or something. And
absolutely.
That's huge.
Well, that's huge. And that's great advice. And I will add to it that you really, no matter who you approach, you have to like if you want to build that relationship, you cannot approach it where you're just waiting to ask them to listen to your music, because people can pick up on that, especially people who have been doing this a while. You pick up on that immediately. And if I sense that in somebody, immediately I put them in a different category.
Yeah. You know how we know we can sense so quickly? Because it's like the same when someone asks, how's it going? And they want guest list that night.
Absolutely. And to be fair to those people, I can identify it because probably I once felt that way.
For sure. Yeah, you're always trying to like tease out the best way to do it. But if it's like, if it's only a one-way exchange, like what's the benefit for the other person, right? Not that everything has to have benefits and stuff, but like ultimately, like you're just way better off trying to like build relationships with people. And then when the time comes, they'll be happy to do a favor for you.
What you said ties back into what you said earlier, which is momentum, right? So build the relationship, just, make a friend. That's momentum. That's an evolving, changing relationship. If, if one event comes out of it, that's great. But if you focus on the one event, you don't have any momentum, right?
Totally. Yeah. Just like hanging up everything on that one thing.
Yeah.
Well, it'll drive you insane as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely it will.
And then I think the other thing would be like coming in like with that vision really like thought out is really helpful. Like when someone, they're like, this is kind of like the concept for like maybe the art or something. And like, this was kind of like the concept behind the EP. I don't know. Maybe people think sometimes that labels help shape those ideas, but ultimately, like, I think the best ones like start with the artist, of course, because the label, I think in this generation, a lot of times artists get confused about the roles that a lot of these things are. Like you have a label, you have a manager, and all these things. But like, the way I hear young artists talk about managers, sometimes it's like they're trying to like work for the manager or something.
100%, yeah.
And I'm like, the manager works for you because... And like, I don't think it's not like get to work, man. Like, it shouldn't be like a fucked up relationship. Right. Like it should be a mutual respect. And that's when it wins the most. But like all of those things don't, like the product is the music. So like, if you stop making music, like all of those relationships go away.
100%.
So like, you have to remember that.
And those relationships and those people, they aren't going to fix something. It's still on you. The same way you were talking about a label earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like people just sit around and they're like, it's like the same thing where it's like I sometimes will just ask them, like, what's your goal? And they're like, I really want to play festivals. And I'm like, cool, show me like the tracks that you want to play that you've made at those festivals. And they're like, oh, I'm still working on it. I'm like, then why are we even talking yet?
Right. Exactly, dude.
Just put in the work. It's fine. It's hard, but it's hard. It's hard.
No,
and
it's it's super hard. And like I said before, there's no roadmap. So it's hard to even, if you don't know anything at the start, it's hard to understand the steps you need to take to get there. But
as an artist, you're always going to have that crippling self-doubt that everything you make is garbage.
Yeah. You got that?
Like, I'm better at it now, but like, man, like honestly, like up till like 2017, I literally was like uncertain of like every single song I ever put out.
Yeah. And that's, you know, what, almost a decade of putting out music on that
10 years by far. I did the math actually. Like, I don't know if you like familiar with like Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours thing.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, it's like requires 10,000 hours to become an expert.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, 10 years, like 1,000 hours a year. Like that kind of like roughly adds up.
I'd buy that.
Yeah. Especially with touring and all that.
Right.
Not that I think I'm an expert by any means, but I did sort of have a moment where it clicked a little more for me, where I sort of feel like now I get to choose. Like, if I invest the time into this idea that I started, I can like get it to a place where it feels acceptable and good to me. I don't know how long that will take still.
Right.
Still could be like 3 months sometimes.
Sure.
But kind of like when I've decided to commit to the song, I know I can like grease it into something that is like within the realm of like a thing that like people would listen to, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, do you think that correlates with your musical evolution? Like, have you kind of, you know, like mentally you've evolved to the point where you can sort of trust in your instincts a little more? Do you think that correlates with sort of the music you find yourself making now? Like, is this sort of, you know, not your like final form, but is this sort of what it's been building to?
Yes and no. I mean, I just
I'm not trying to say it's over, that you're done.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that at all.
Good.
I kind of just feel like, because I started this other project called Glass Petals, which is like just sort of housey bass bangers. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. I got like, some of it on promo, man. It's really good.
Thank you. Yeah, but like I haven't really made stuff like that in so long. But kind of like when I just sort of sat down to do it, it just came a lot easier, even though I like really hadn't been touching that kind of stuff for so long. It was just kind of like, I just felt more comfortable with my tools, I guess.
Right.
So I don't even feel like it was like, oh, I'm better at pop music now, or like, because a lot of my personal stuff is of course pop and commercial, but I just kind of felt like I'm just better at music now. Not specific types of music. I kind of feel like I could make a better rap beat now than 10 years ago too.
Right.
Even if 10 years ago I was like specifically only making rap, I still think I could make a better rap beat now just because I have a better palette maybe. Yeah,
I think that's a great way to look at it. And it makes me curious too. I was looking at your discography. You know, we covered the 2 albums you put out kind of early on with Dim Mak, and then later in 2018 was the Next Season album.
Yeah, my most recent album, yeah.
And so in between the first 2 albums and the third, there's there's a big period of time, right?
Yeah, like an embarrassingly large gap.
Well, I was just curious, like what was going on career-wise during that time? Because I have to imagine, I mean, you were touring like mad in those years, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few factors. One was like my deal with Dim Mak had ended, so I was sort of like in the midst of like finding a new deal. And I found that, and then I kind of put out a few singles with them, but that I was like proud of, but not like really proud of.
Yeah.
Like I was proud of the writing, but I was like never happy with the production. And that was like part of my like crippling uncertainty that I couldn't get over.
Sure.
And so I'd actually written an entire album with songs at like that time, and I like scrapped the entire thing.
Wow.
I just like listened to it one day, and I literally like I figured out like this one question to ask myself when I make stuff now that like has really helped me with everything, and it's, would I listen to this if it wasn't by me?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
And it's like it's like a terrifying thing to ask a little. It's kind of like, I think it's good for like your show too. Like, would I go see myself play?
Right.
Because
would I play this in my sets if I didn't make
it?
Yeah.
Totally. So I just kind of like, I listened to that record that I made that didn't end up coming out, and I was kind of like, yeah, I think these songs are fine, but I just didn't really feel like they were cool or me. They just didn't feel cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the coolness is a hard thing to measure as well, but
I think, and probably in that time period, that's sort of when the Bloghouse era, the indie electro era, was petering out a little, and EDM, quote unquote, was rising up, right? And so I don't think you were alone in sort of reevaluating what was going on.
Yeah. And then I kind of had one other turning point, which was I was kind of like trapped in my like old production setup a little bit. Like I had an iMac in my studio, and I was still using Reason because I grew up on it. Yeah. And I was like using like Pro Tools and shit. It was like a disaster.
Oh man. I started producing on Pro Tools and I
love, like Pro Tools is great, but it's not made for dance music. Let's be real.
No, not at all.
But it's great for vocals and stuff. I love it for that. I still would love to track vocals in Pro Tools over Ableton to this day, probably. And then I kind of just had this moment where like, I kind of like felt set in my ways a little bit. And I think I was like 29 or something at the time. And I was like, so is this it? Like, is this just how I produce music and I'm just going to like do this? Or am I going to like own my shit and realize that maybe I'm not as competent as I think I am? And I just literally like bought a new computer that day, bought Ableton, and I kind of like reset everything. And I remember like that time, I was like waking up in the morning feeling like I was 19 again. I was like so stoked to just like go do stuff.
That's so cool, man.
I'd missed that feeling.
It's back to the unknown, right? All of a sudden, you're not in this comfortable place that you established these like well-worn routines.
Totally. And I had a studio in Vancouver. It's actually still in this building, but there was a bunch of like Monster Cat producers that were like in some of the other rooms.
Oh, nice.
And they're all young kids, like Haywire and stuff. And they're like, those kids are so talented. Like, blows my mind.
Crazy.
He's crazy. Yeah. And Tristam, he's another Monster Cat artist that was also in the same building. And I was just kind of chatting with them, and I would watch them on Ableton a bit. And I'm like, fuck, I suck. And then I was kind of like, shit, I like identify as a music producer. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. This is embarrassing. So I just asked Haywire, I'm like, can I just like sit and watch you a couple days? I'm like, literally won't bother you. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, doors open. I'm like, cool. So I would like chill and watch him. And then I literally just grinded every day. I'm just going to do like 5 hours, 5 days a week and see what happens. And yeah, I just kind of like owned my bullshit and humbled myself. And I don't know, like the minute you have to, like we're all students, right? Like I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a student forever.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the second you start thinking you know everything is the moment when you can almost be sure that you don't, right?
Oh, yeah. I wrote that in a song, actually. It was like, fuck, now I'm not going to forget my own lyric. Oh, shit. What is the lyric now? The more all I know now is I know nothing now.
Hey, there you go. I love that.
Yeah. Oh man, almost botched my own lyric. How embarrassing. He has a ghostwriter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting question too, is you work with a lot of vocalists. We talked about how you've kind of transitioned into writing like these full songs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious about your writing process, because I didn't even know that do you write all your own lyrics? Is it collaborative sometime?
It's like mostly like the best case scenario for me is usually just me and the singer, who ends up like just us kind of in a room or like apartment or just something chill, and we're just kind of like hanging out and bouncing ideas off each other. Like Faking It, the one I did with Kaskade, like me and Ophelia like wrote the like bones of that song just like at her house in LA one day, with like hanging out with her cats. And I was like, this is cool. So I like that because at the end of the day, like I realized like I gravitate towards like pop and mainstream. I love that stuff, and I find it really challenging, which is why I enjoy it. But like there's a lot of bad pop music out there too. Just because it's catchy doesn't mean I think the lyrics are good, and it's hard to unless it's someone you really trust. I feel like it's really important to be in the room to you have to put who you are into it as well, and then I can relate more to the song as it's out, which I think is important too, especially if you're trying to establish yourself as an artist more so than just I don't know. There's a lot of DJ. There's a lot of DJs who are just, not to name names, but they're not trying to be like an artist. Like I want to make albums and stuff. And
and I was actually thinking about you, and I think, with the explosion of EDM that happened in the last 10 years, I think there have been some artists who sort of forced themselves to be more pop and more mainstream, whether they were trying to just get some of that money or whether they felt pressured to do it, whatever it is. I think there's some people who did that and it was just not a natural fit and you could kind of feel it. Whereas with you, I feel like it was almost the opposite, where this lane kind of opened up and you were like, oh, this feels better than what I was doing. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I agree. I do. I actually don't know if anyone's put it that way. So, no, it's a good observation, and I take that as a compliment. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it is a compliment. I'm giving you the compliment that I think your music, to me, I hear it, and it's like, oh yeah, that sounds natural. That sounds like him. And not that your old stuff doesn't, but there is other modern, more pop leaning stuff where I'm like, I know the person and I'm like, no,
totally.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. It just doesn't work sometimes.
Well, and I kind of I sort of hit a bit of a wall with bangers. When I did Joker and stuff, it was my idea for that track was I'm going to make the heaviest track I can make. Yeah. That was the whole idea.
Yeah.
So when it goes off on the dance floor, people were like, what is happening? That's the reaction I was seeking, and I got it, and it was fun. But I was like, so where the fuck does this end? I just keep making a heavier song every time. It just kind of felt like I could see the end of that so clearly the minute I did it, that I was like, it kind of felt like Jackass 3, where you're like, how much crazier can they get?
Right. Somebody's going to die.
Someone's going to die. Yeah.
I mean, it's really funny you say that, man, because in some ways, nothing has changed. There's scenes that are going through that right now.
Yeah.
I look at the modern dubstep scene, and there's some amazing music being written, and sound design is being pushed in insane ways. But I talk to some of these people, and a lot of them are in the same place of I'm not sure where it goes from here.
Totally.
I want to do something else, but we've gone so far that I don't know how necessarily.
And I have so much respect for those bass producers, because they're by far the most talented and intricate producers.
They are the best, basically.
But to me, as an artist, it's you kind of get to decide what you want to focus on. And I used to share a studio with Lazy Rich.
Shout out to Lazy Rich. I love that guy.
I'll miss that guy. And I wish he still made music. But
I know, man.
Great producer. But
I played one of his last gigs ever with him at this weird festival in Japan a few years back. And we talked for a long time about how he was hanging it up. And we just had this cool week where we hung out together. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's genuine dude, amazing. Shout out Lazy Rich.
Shout out Lazy Rich, who is almost certainly not listening.
Go stream all those classic electro house bangers.
Dude, he's got some.
Oh yeah. Complex Joe actually probably would be even better way to put it.
True.
But I kind of noticed because I would come in, I'd be like, what are you working on? He's like, oh, I've been EQing this kick for 8 hours. And I'm just and I was like, I just don't think I'm going to ever be that person. And I kind of just accepted it. And I was like, well, my thing is I'd rather work on a melody for 8 hours. Literally changing. I'm like, maybe that note, is that better? 2 semitones up? Just that one note in the middle.
Right.
And that's the thing that gets me excited. I'm like, oh, it's just not quite but to me, the bass world is they're they're doing more what Lazy Rich does, where they're really going in on the like
the sonics of it.
Yeah. And I kind of like made a decision. I'm like, I really like more interested in the songwriting, I think.
Well, and this goes all the way back to what we were talking about at the start, is sort of like your particular brain chemistry, right? And what I always talk about, that you have to follow the fun. Like whatever it is that you're passionate about that keeps you excited, it doesn't even matter what that is, but that's what you have to sort of follow and not get into playing somebody else's game. Because if you're trying to, play this game that somebody else is way more into than you are, it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, because you're gonna get exposed that you're faking it like almost instantly.
Right. or even if it's you're not faking it, it's just if you don't have the same passion for it, it's not going to happen, because they're just going to do it all the time.
And that can change too. Like maybe in 5 years, I'll be like, you know what? I really want to get into more like deep diving into synthesis. Is that the right word?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows? It's always evolving. I don't want to be like, I'll never get into like cracking open serum and really
never say never,
diving.
man.
Yeah.
But it does raise the question, kind of, where do you see yourself fitting in these days? Do you see yourself as a part of EDM? Do you see yourself making pop music? Where maybe it's a two-part question. Like, where do you see yourself fitting in? And is there a way you'd like to be perceived?
Ooh, good question. It's really put me on here.
It's a good one. Yeah.
No, it's
you
good.
don't have to have an answer.
No, I like
it.
I like it. I think like, I always wanted my song on the radio. That was like a thing that I knew if I never got it, it would bother me. Right. And I did it. Like I've done it a couple times. Like at least in Canada, I've had like a number 3 or something, which was crazy.
Yeah. And you've been on the Billboard charts too.
Yeah. So, like hearing my song on the radio, like when I'm just like in a car, is like completely fucking mind blowing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that scene in That Thing You Do where they like run and they're like, "This song's on the radio."
Yeah. They run outside.
I love that. Like that's me internally, at least every time it happens.
It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah. Especially because it took me like 12 years.
Well, sure. But that only makes it more significant, I think, man.
So I don't know. I don't really know where I fit in, I think sometimes. I think like I love EDM and stuff, but I don't really feel like I relate to like the big EDM dudes like Hardwell and all those types. I don't like, and then but like I like sort of like, I like Calvin Harris a lot. I think he does a really good job at like sort of being like pop, but also like having this like really massive respect for like what dance is. Oh man. I don't know how anyone could like criticize his output, because to go from, these giant pop records with Rihanna to, what he's doing now with like the Love Regenerator, like weird acid techno project that definitely nobody was asking him for. Yeah. And which I love both ends of it, man. He's super inspiring. And I think it's that when he did have these massive features, like even if it was from people that you wouldn't expect him to collab with, for example, like he always did it sort of like on his own terms and sound. And that's like ultimately like the thing I respect. So it's finding that balance just between serving the song, serving the singer, and serving yourself. And I think the people that are conscious of all those things, hopefully, I think usually make the best product. Because a lot of times I'll hear like an amazing vocalist and I'm like, they'll jump on a song by an artist and I'm like, I don't think it didn't matter what vocal this was. Right. Yeah. No matter how it's like a vocal slapped over like whatever beat they made. Whereas I'm always like, I want to do my thing, but also like really respect the artist because they've taken a gamble working with me, because it's going to live on their Spotify releases as well. So like, I don't want to like, I guess I just like, I feel fortunate that like now I have the opportunity to work with bigger artists, and I like really want to take that seriously and like deliver a work, like something that like both people are proud of, not just like, here's the fucking sick drop, even though like this song is about like being sensitive.
Yeah, I think we've had enough of those songs, but I think we can be done with that.
Like save it for the VIP edit for your set. Do whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a fuck.
100%.
But like, does that need to be like the official release? I don't know.
Well, I mean, so what excites you right now? What are you working on? What makes you happy? You know, especially in these like weird quarantine times. What gets you stoked about music?
Honestly, like I feel so fortunate that like when I make music still, I still like lose track of time every day. It's like completely wild. Like sometimes I don't always get to that zone as quickly as I want to, but I can like almost every day, I'll like look at the clock. I'm like, damn, like 3 hours just passed. And I guess I feel like I was talking to like one of my best friends about this, and he was kind of like talking with his sister recently about how she was a bit stressed about something, and he was like, oh yeah, like I love to just like, you know, work on some music or something when I feel that way. And she's like, you're so lucky that you like know the thing that you like your thing.
Right? Yeah.
And I guess like I feel like really fortunate to like know that I feel like I would be taking it for granted if I don't dive into it.
Yeah.
And there's like this Seinfeld quote, who I love, where he just is like, you know I want to make comedy, so I figure while I'm here, I might as well try to make as much of that comedy stuff as I can. And I kind of like feel the same way about music.
What are you working on right now? Like, I guess this is just me giving you the plug opportunity, but is there anything, I know you've got the single Mine that came out a couple months ago.
And we're working on, I've been working on a few singles to follow that up. Hopefully we'll have something in the summer. I mean, I'm working on some bigger stuff, but I don't really want to like talk about it too much because I haven't quite formulated how I'm going to like announce the next steps. But we're doing a remix.
You're writing a lot of music.
Yeah.
Currently.
I'm honestly like, I have too much music. It's like an issue. It's like a good problem to have. And then just like a couple like random plugs, like we're doing a remix contest for Mine, which has been really cool to see like all these young producers submitting stuff.
How long is that open for? I gotta get my Discord on
I think it was 2 weeks, 2 weeks left yesterday or 2 days ago. So I think there's like 12 days left. So
okay,
there's
perfect.
still time. There's still time.
Yeah. I'm gonna send some of my Discord folks to go look at that.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. And the prizes are sick. There's like, so you get like an official release if you win. You get to do a guest mix on my radio show, which is on Sirius, which is dope. And then you get like studio monitors by Genelec. There's like Odyssey headphones. Like you kind of like can kit your studio out. So it's pretty sick. Tight. But man, there's been like over 2,000 remixes already. It's crazy.
Have fun going through those, buddy.
I know. I think I got a bit of help to whittle out some of the non-contenders, unfortunately. Yeah. Dude, the day we announced it, there was like 10 in 24 hours. And I'm like, you guys know you have a month, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's my last piece of advice for producers. Like, you'll always be stoked on it the minute you're done it that day. Please sleep on it before you send it.
Oh, yeah, man.
One night. Just give yourself one night. Resist the urge for one day.
At least that, man. Yeah, there's always this weird sense of urgency where I think I was telling this to somebody the other day that, you know, if you have a relationship with somebody, don't worry if it takes you a couple weeks to send them something. Like, they're not going to forget about you.
No.
That door is still open.
It's music. No one knows how to text or email or anything. So you got time. You got time.
Are you missing the tour life? Are you missing being on the road? Or is it nice to have a little time off?
It's both, weirdly. Because I kind of like, I obviously miss playing for like audiences because it's so fun.
Yeah.
And I love traveling. I'm like such a travel person. I'm like, that might be like my addiction a little bit.
Yeah. I relate to that.
Yeah. It's like, because like, it's sort of like hard to learn how to have a regular schedule a little bit. And I've sort of been dealing with that a little bit, but I like it.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Like it took me a while. Like the first month of quarantine, it was like pretty bad, like pretty toxic.
Yeah.
I was like, let's see how many vices I can combine in one day.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But now I kind of like, there's like been a few like bucket list things. Like my sleep's been pretty messed up for like a good part of my touring career. And it was always one of those things I'm like, I'll get to it when I have a break. But I always thought that break would be like when I decided to take a break, not because there's a global pandemic forced upon us, I guess.
But then the question is, had it not been forced on you, would you ever have done it?
Exactly. And I think I realized that. So now I'm kind of like, did a little bit of a reset now, and I'm like feeling pretty good. And I was like, you know what? I need to work on this like sleep stuff, because otherwise it's going to like be a fucking nightmare for the rest, not to like pun intended a little bit.
What was the issue? You were just staying up too late, or
just that, and like just couldn't fall asleep really. Like it used to take me really long to fall asleep, like sometimes 2 to 3 hours like a night. Yeah. So, you know, it's like when your life is in front of a screen, it's obviously not healthy, but what are the things that you do to at least like minimize those effects? Yeah.
Do you have that issue that I think a lot of people in our line of work and just a lot of people in the world have, of being a little too attached to the device?
I'm pretty good with my phone now. Like but I still like pretty attached to my computer.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we sort of have to be, right?
Yeah. Like the phone, like I used to just leave my phone at home sometimes when I would go to the studio, and that really like helped.
Major key again for young producers, man.
Totally. Because you realize how much it takes over your life when you come home, and then you like look through your messages and you're like, cool, it took me 7 minutes to respond to the 8 hours of messages that I missed today.
Yeah.
So why would I normally devote 2 hours of my time to that?
Right. And it's happening in little chunks of time throughout the day.
Totally.
So every single time it's breaking, whatever you're doing. Yeah.
And people almost like respect you more if you don't respond instantly.
That's also true.
Not that you should like play some fucked up game where you gotta wait. But
I will say, people don't mind as much as you might think they would,
For sure. Yeah. And a lot of the times, like, I'm pretty, like, on it with things. And a lot of times, like, there would be, like, a problem where I would just get involved that I probably didn't need to actually help solve. And then, I was like, if I left my phone at home, when I come home, I'm like, oh, that problem resolved itself. And I saw the whole thing being discussed and then resolved. And I was like, yeah, things can still function. It's good to I think I control a little bit, and it's good to let go of that. I think it's a good practice.
I agree, man. I did want to bring up, this is very random and not related to anything we've been talking about, but just a random memory that I have of you. This was kind of early on. This was probably like early 2010s. You were on tour and I was living in Washington, D.C. And you came through on tour, some small little club, kind of bottle servicey vibes. And opening for you was a new friend of mine who DJ'd under the name Clockwork, who would go on to become R.L. Grime.
Yeah.
And do you remember it might have only been like a couple weeks you guys were touring together, but I was just wondering, because I was there and I remember it, I wonder if you have any memories of that time.
I remember that tour for sure. It was kind of a like really hit or miss tour. We had like some really, really good shows and then some just like full on disasters. But
I remember the show, the DC one, the club was small and there were people there, but it wasn't like a crazy vibe.
Yeah, they probably didn't know what they were there for, some of the people.
I think that's right.
A bottle service vibe.
Yeah.
Man, I remember like pushing so hard to have Clockwork on that tour, because I don't think at that time they were like, you want an opening act? Like, you're not even at the level, like you should be opening still probably. But yeah, I really fought to get Henry on that tour. So I'm like stoked to see what he's become. Well,
people forget. I don't even know if some people know that he had this house project that at first was way bigger than R.L. Grime and looked like it was going to become a massive thing.
I remember on that tour, he was like he's like, yeah, here's this like side thing I'm working on, and just like would show me stuff in the car and stuff. And I was like, that's cool. This looks cool. R.L. Stein, hey?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, it was sick. But I was like, this stuff's really dope. And then, your side project takes over your main project, and
it's amazing, man. Amazing to see what he's done with it. Do you have any memory? What was he like in those years touring with him?
He was like a good kid to be around because he had that like hunger of like wanting, like he was using Reason too at the time. And it was one of those, he was one of those people where, you know how like when you're having a bad day in the studio and you like want to blame your DAW, your software instead of like yourself. And then I'm like, well, Reason sucks. That's why I suck. And then you like find out an amazing record was made on that thing. You're like, shit. So I just don't know how to use this. It's me. He was kind of that for me. Like, I'd be like, wait, you made this song in Reason? And then, so that was like inspiring to like have someone younger to,
that hunger, that reinterpretation. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's cool, man. How are you feeling? I feel like we did pretty good here.
That was awesome.
Yeah, man. Is there anything else we didn't talk about? Anything you want to get out there?
Nah, I don't want to promote anything. Fuck that.
Cool. Well, then let me just one more time promote Glass Petals, because I think that is a very cool project.
Yeah, we can, if you want to follow us on Instagram, that'd be cool. It's 3 S's at the end because someone already had it. Bullshit.
Someone had that and they had the 2S version.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's like 42069 at the end too. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll link to that in the description as well. But yeah, definitely people should go check that out as well, because that project, you're back to making bangers. Yeah,
if everyone who like hated on me for not making bangers anymore, there you go. You happy?
You're welcome. Well, fuck, man. This has been great. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks so much, man. So fun.
All right, dude. Peace. All right, that's the show. Shout out to Felix Cartal. Great to have you on the show, man. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was a treat. Don't forget, Felix Cartal has a new single out right now called Mine, and it is a hit. He's also got a new side project called Glass Petals. Their new song, Get Closer, is amazing. House music. It is back to the underground vibes with that one. There's a link in the description where you can go follow him. There's also a link where you can go follow me and where you can come join the back-to-back Discord server. Come hang out with me. Come chat with the coolest crew on the internet. I have not fact-checked that statement, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And above all else, I hope you are staying healthy. I hope you are staying happy. Try to do something fun, something you don't normally do, something to kind of break out of those routines. I love all of you out there listening. Lots of great episodes to come. Stay tuned, and I will talk to you next Tuesday. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.